Heather, what authority does the NCAA have over college football?
It doesn't have any. It doesn't have any, unless you're talking about the FCS. That's where they have the authority, and that's one of the championships, one of the 22 NCAA fall championships that will not be played this year because less than 50% of teams are going to be participating in sports. But look, Mark Emmert talked about from the days of the BCS beyond, for the past 100 years, college football has figured out its own way of determining a champion.
All right, and so all the NCAA does then is provide champions and then bring down punishment when people do things that are against their rules. So, Paul, he just said there, this is the way it has to be. And there's no way to have some sort of college football czar, a commissioner, if you will, the way they have in all professional sports. Is he right?
He is right. And I think as many times as we have pushed the idea, Greeny, of a college football czar, watching this week is an indicator of why we are not going to have a football czar. The 5 college commissioners of the Power 5 usually meet at a table and work collaboratively. They are in charge essentially of the college football playoff. But this week you saw that fissure between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten versus the other 3. And I don't think if you put those 5 commissioners in a room and let them spend the next 28 days, they could come up with a leader. So, yeah, Emmert is right. And by the way, the reason why Emmert says all this is because he makes $3 million a year and he likes his job. And if he came out yesterday and did what he really wanted to do, in my opinion, and say college football should not go on in any division this fall, he probably would have been fired today. So he's like so many other people in this country when it involves COVID. They say what they're supposed to say, not what they really believe.
Well, so let me take it a step farther. If indeed, Paul, we have what many people expect someday to happen, which is the Power 5 conferences to break away in totality from the NCAA, would, in your vision of that, would they still have 5 separate leaders within it, or would that fall under the purview of one person who in theory was in charge?
Yeah, then somebody would have to be in charge, as crazy as that may sound when you compare it to the NCAA. And Greeny, we're still in the moment right now. We're still trying to see whether there will be a college football season, a college basketball season. But when this is all over, and whenever that is, there is going to be an unbelievable day of reckoning. And I think the NCAA as we know it is not going to survive. Mark Emmert knows that. The NCAA basically provides one important event every year, and I'm not diminishing baseball and gymnastics. It's March Madness. It's $1 billion event, and it feeds the beast. And if these 5 can come together when this is over and push forward, I think the NCAA will be dead, and you'll see a superstructure in college athletics, and I think it's coming pretty soon.
Is that, Heather, I'm not asking you to speculate on things that obviously no one knows with detail, but how would you describe the general sense around the sport that something like that is a real possibility in the foreseeable future?
Well, certainly in the midst of a pandemic, Greeny, I'm not going to rule anything out in terms of long-term implications. But I'll tell you this, everybody has to remember that those Power 5 conference commissioners, the athletic directors, they help comprise the NCAA. They are a part of it. People talk about the NCAA as if it's this building in Indianapolis, which it is. But what makes up the NCAA is every single institution of Division 1, 2, 3 that belongs to it, right? When we talk about the Football Oversight Committee, we're talking about the NCAA Football Oversight Committee. Shane Lyons, the athletic director at West Virginia, is a part of that. All of these people comprise the NCAA's committees. So when you talk about it, you're talking about the Power 5. So is it realistic for them to break away? I mean, it's possible, yes. But even if they were to do that, you still have to have some sort of oversight, some sort of compliance, and that type of enforcement that nobody likes, regardless of where it comes from.
Domonique, as you sit here and just listen to this whole conversation, as one who played the sport with the collegiate and the professional level, what are your thoughts?
I think you made the point earlier that Mark Emmert has the opportunity right now to speak up and do more than just throw his hands up and say that it's no longer my responsibility. I can do nothing about this. I think it's something about principle. And anyone who's ever had a job understands that you can't always say what you feel or say what you want to say at every moment. So I understand and I sympathize with Mark Emmert in that situation. But sometimes all of us know that there are certain situations that are just too big for you to sit idly by and throw your hands up. And if the medical advisors that we talked about earlier, I think it was Dr. Del Rio, is saying that this is the Titanic, I assume that he's telling Mark Emmert the same thing, if not more aggressively. And if Mark Emmert hears that from him and his decision is to come up and say, my hands are tied, I can do nothing about it. And if it's true, what Paul is suggesting, that it's about preserving his salary, that's something that I'd be uncomfortable living with. And I hope that Mark Emmert can do some soul searching and figure out if this is something that he feels strongly enough about. If the health and safety of his players is something he feels strongly enough about, that he's going to listen to the medical advisor who says this is the Titanic and not allow players to board the Titanic for a measly $3 million. Like, he's already made plenty of money. I'm sure he's fine. So go ahead. If this is what you are hearing and this is what you genuinely believe, stand up and put them out there and say, this is not safe.